Welcome to Vegas Cannabis Summit 2018. My name is Matthew Evertsen. I'm one of the co-founders. I'd like to welcome anybody to come and take a seat and join us for our 12:30 panel, Marketing in the Mainstream. I'm joined with some great guests who've got some insight to share with us. I'd like to start down on the end with James, co-founder from Dope Magazine, with also the other founding partner, David, Eddie Donaldson from the Grow Division, and Troy Meadows joining us with the Legion of Bloom. Thanks, guys, for joining us. Appreciate it. We know that there's tremendous opportunity in the industry here in Nevada and, of course, across the country. And with that is messaging and branding and marketing that is able to sell this new narrative of health and wellness. And we wanted to be able to get insight from these guys as they're leaders in their industry. I wanted to start with maybe James or David and say, when did you guys first recognize an opportunity in Seattle? And how has it changed since you first started? When did Dope Magazine first begin?
Yeah, I've been in Seattle since, for 41 years, so I've seen it change a lot, and I've been an entrepreneur for a very long time, and when the opportunity to get into a medical store presented itself, like a lot of different businesses, I saw a need, and that need was more education and also an opportunity for businesses to brand themselves. So that's when me and James got together, and he really is the backbone and really the creator of the brand itself.
What year was that, Dave?
2011.
2011, awesome. And Eddie, you're the founder of the Grow Division Marketing and Branding Company, and you're based in California. How did you first professionally engage in working in the cannabis industry?
I think I was probably 12, and I started selling weed. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know, I had a marketing company, and influencers and cool guy shit kind of got stale. And I was like, what are we gonna do to be cool? And it's like, it got more and more difficult. So I'm like, you know what, I need to turn the page a little bit and kind of focus on cannabis because the industry started to boom so much. So 2 years ago, we decided to drop Toyota and some of the other business we were working with and kind of turn our sights on cannabis,
Yeah. Troy, how long have you guys been you started Legion of Bloom, how long have you guys been operating?
So the Legion of Bloom, we founded the company very late in 2015, so like really, right at the beginning of 2016, but we have a core competence of, collective medicinal cannabis farmers as founders. So between the 5 founders, we have 50 plus years of cultivation experience that kind of back, what the brand is doing as far as cultivation practices. So, a lifetime of experience with cannabis, in a brand that has been around since, really the turn of 2016.
And when you guys first began, a lot of the design and the packaging and a lot of that creative ideas was all being done in-house?
Yeah, we do all of our marketing and design in-house. It was a really collaborative process between the founders to try to create something that's not just accessible from the outside, but has and conveys a strong message for the quality that the brand speaks for.
And we've seen in the short time that the industry has had a chance to grow and develop a lot of change from initial messaging to where we are now and where we're going. James, how have you seen some of the clients that you guys work with, maybe even just down to the visual aesthetic of the font and the images that are being portrayed? How has that kind of evolved since you guys began Dope?
Well, it's pretty comedic in the beginning when we first started Dope, because you had a bunch of farmers and people that were great at growing cannabis but had no clue about branding or marketing or creating a brand or even developing a logo. It was straight up, you're getting Microsoft Word files sent to you for advertisements, and it was pretty bad.
Clip art, sure.
Clip art, and we're just, so, for the longest time we were designing this beautiful magazine, and we had ads in it that just looked like they're from the 90s, and so we had this clash of design and things that were not designed well. So over the years, you know, as more professionals from other industries have come on board, and I think that's really where you start seeing the ship turn a little bit, is people that are doing it professionally, you know, working for Microsoft or Amazon, come into cannabis, they're bringing with them their skill sets. Now, all of a sudden, you got some beautiful brands, some beautiful packaging that's starting to come out, and it makes our lives easier because, you know, we always say advertisements are also content in our magazine as well.
Right.
People like looking at the ads because they're fun to see all the newest, coolest stuff that's coming out and beautiful bud shots from the farms that are, you know, advertising with us. So it's helped our brand by having better design work come down the pipe.
Do you guys find yourself creating a criteria to your, you know, being able to provide a sandbox to your clients, or so to speak, approval processes?
Well, I think it's very important for us to be their resource, their professional, and to be truthful, because at the end we want them to succeed.
Absolutely,
Right? Absolutely, we want them to sell more products. We want them to sell more on the shelf, right? And brands that sell themselves begin to get the shelf space. And with that, you need to be able to build something very recognizable, something relatable, and I think that's
because we're communicating to a culture that has existed underground for decades, and now we're trying to be able to bring that subculture to the mainstream. We want to be able to bring that camaraderie and community that we all share and recognize in a way that is digestible to the average and even new consumer.
And
right?
people want to get there faster now. A long time ago, it moved like anything else, like this, you know, no speed at all. If you wanted to go sell some weed or some edibles, it's going to take him a long time to get to these masses. But the opportunity to use different platforms allows you to really speed up your success, especially if you stand behind your product. Right? You stand behind your product. That's the hardest part in building the brand. Building the audience is easy because there's a lot of resources that are there at your disposal, right? Do what you do very good and let the professionals do the other part, because they spent their whole life and their life mission to do that part.
Right.
I think.
Eddie, these guys work in print with your clients. Are you seeing the majority of their marketing dollars go to live events where they're engaging with the consumer at an on-site consumption? Or are they doing stuff with digital content? Are they shooting video? Are they using Instagram?
Most of the brands we work with are using events as a key piece because you can see ROI on it. You can actually sell some product. I think, you know, these guys can contest spending advertising dollars on print and digital is difficult at this point because there's so many regulations and there's so many, you know, blockage kind of to getting the messages out. So yeah, most of the brands we work with are key on events. Like we're working on the Kaya Fest. We're working on a bunch of festivals across the country, and we're getting good success on selling sponsorship.
I wanted to get into the festivals. I wanted to ask you about your hat. I wanted to ask you about Heavy Grass and the very music-forward element behind the marketing of that. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, Heavy Grass is a brand that I came up with or developed a year and a half ago. We raised a decent amount of money, and the focus for that brand, it's a metal brand, so it's all about rock and roll, metal.
Rock and roll.
Avenged Sevenfold, Slipknot, Marilyn Manson.
We got some fans in the house, okay. Does anybody like music? Do you guys like music?
We're activating at a lot of festivals across the country with just the lifestyle merch, you know, which we've been doing pretty well. And we're taking our time picking the markets that we want to do licensing deals, but it's definitely music focus, it's lifestyle. Pretty soon we'll be advertising in the mag, and hopefully get a good spread or, you know, some plugs.
We've got
It's definitely fun because it's not just weed, it's a lifestyle.
It's culture.
Yeah.
And we've got, you know, media, we've got advertising, and we've got a potential client here, you know, in the brand Legion of Bloom as well. When you're trying to get your ideas out, what do you guys as a brand lean towards? Do you lean on your Instagram? Do you lean on direct newsletter messaging? Do you lean on on-site buyback deals? How do you engage with your consumers? Or what are your objectives when engaging your consumer?
I mean, sure, for us, I think everything that you mentioned is something that, you know, we utilize. We've kind of doubled down in the last, like, 2 quarters on just our content marketing and being able to create a lot of, you educational content and just content about the brand available on, all of the social platforms, as well as our own website, blog, newsletter that we put out. We work with the Grow Division with their list, a couple other lists in the area, in the Northern California and Southern California region. But, I think the experiential value that we can bring, so there's a lot of on-site demonstrations that happen, a lot of incentives that go to the patient, directly from the brand, where the brand gets to relate specifically, to a patient or to a consumer, but then also, marrying in the experience with different influencer-style events, bringing the different people that we work with to different functions, so we can all just kind of like commingle and create like a very symbiotic relationships where everyone kind of understands the value that the brand brings to the table, but also everyone kind of gets the messaging. And that's what's really important and really difficult, is to instill that level of quality that you only get from putting a lot of like time and energy into the product that you create. Going back to what Dave was saying, it's like, if you create a really amazing product, then it's going to sell itself, and makes the marketing end of it so much easier when you start to deal with other influencers, deal with other people that have like that outreach into the space. So it kind of like helps, it really starts with quality forward, like product forward thinking, and then, from there, the education process. So.
There's a lot of synergy in these panel discussions between activism, education, getting the right messaging, and how these trends shift towards health and wellness. And there's a lot of discussion of, influence. You just mentioned influencer activations and being able to get people to engage in it, and that's the best way to either change their mind or reaffirm their experience. Who are some of the brands? The first earlier panel were mentioning some brands who are dealing with things on a national level and having to change their names. They were talking about Gorilla Glue, and then there was we're talking about Girl Scout cookies trying to have to re-register as GSC. Those challenges, do you see it getting easier? Do you see it getting tougher? How do you see, from a producer standpoint, being able to get the middle America, people who have very limited access to this plant, and the access they have had has been this propaganda messaging for the past 80 years. How do we get those people's minds changed? Who are the brands really thinking on that kind of national level, other than the ones I just mentioned? Or you can, maybe those are the brands, but speak to that if you could.
Well, I think the first and most powerful thing is education. And when Dope started, we were mostly focused on medical and social justice. Dope stands for, or stood for, still stands for, defending our patients everywhere.
Say that again?
Defending our patients everywhere.
Awesome.
So we initially...
that deserves an applause.
So in 2011, that's, medical was what was happening in Washington State. So as recreational came along, we had to, shift our focus a little bit to speak to a broader audience, not just, medical, but now we're talking to recreational users, so it's a little bit of a different conversation. But we never wanted to lose the fact that, cannabis covers a wide array of people, from, the medical patient to the, the young hip kid that just wants to get stoned and go to a dope concert. So it's really, you got to ride that line really.
It's a responsibility.
Gently. It's a responsibility, yes. And people in Middle America, we distribute to 30 states now, which we think is great. So people that don't know anything about cannabis can start learning, and then, as the wave sort of rolls into their state, they're going to have some education ahead of time. And we're not just talking about weed porn and, all the stuff that has been the legacy of sort of cannabis media. It's now about people are hungry for education. Like, that's the most interest. Our articles get the biggest hits when we're talking about some real stuff. And it's not the fluffy, let's look at the trichome pictures. It's the tell me what's going on in the world, government, let's talk about social justice, that kind of stuff is what we get into.
Yeah, I mean, the way we are going to change minds is really about the people that are involved. The people. That's what people are afraid of. They're afraid I'm going to be perceived as this, to your point, for propaganda. So being able to go through the magazine and us focusing on the people behind the plant, people behind the cure to, you know what I mean? They got cured by cannabis somehow. I can relate to them. I can relate now to the snowboarder who's a gold medalist. He's not what I thought. He's a gold medalist. Now I see Montel. I see these things.
Right.
Focusing
Visibility.
on, and I think that's where people put their guard down and go, you know what? Maybe it's okay that I have this conversation. Because it's not, what they're seeing in there isn't what they think it is anymore. We're
Right.
changing that perception.
Well, the truth will speak for itself if it has the opportunity to. And I think that that's why it's so important, and I want to thank you gentlemen for joining me and the last group of panelists and the folks who will be with us the rest of today and tomorrow, because it does take that profile, it takes that visibility to share that story, and being able to make it normal for everyday people is what's most important. I want to talk about the fun stuff. I want to talk about what you're looking forward to. You know, there's a lot of discussions about consumption lounges, and you guys activate at live festivals and stuff like that. You know, what's going to happen in Coachella this year? Are they going to let people, you know, all this kind of speculation. What's exciting? There's a lot of, you know, nervous speculation, a lot of anxiety. What's exciting about the industry? What are you looking forward to in 2018? You know, whether specifically as a brand or overall as a community, what's on the horizon?
More events like this. You know, more ways for people, like-minded people, to get together and start bringing into it bigger and bigger. And I think you're going to start to find these lifestyle, like Eddie said, about building a lifestyle around it that's responsible extravagance, that's very, it's a good look for the industry and doing it responsible. So I think events to me is super important, and that goes to conventions, festivals, these educational panels and get-togethers like this. I think continue to do what we're trying to accomplish, which is open the conversation and get together more like-minded people.
Eddie, go ahead.
I mean, me personally, I'm looking forward to some normalization, a little less pressure, a little less sweat, you know, on the actual activity of smoking, giving it away. It's just too much pressure. It's like, do or don't. It's like, I started doing marketing with records, music. I broke a lot of early hip-hop 90 acts. And when I was giving away CDs and tapes, people loved it. They were so happy to get it. And it was such a normal activity to go to a retailer and give away CDs. I want to be able to go and give away grams on the street and go, check this gram, go smoke this. And it not be illegal, or you feel like I'm in trouble if I'm passing a cartridge to someone.
Right.
Because that's when it's gonna, this is a mainstream activity. This isn't like some basement shit anymore. So I'm looking forward to legislation changing quickly across the country, not just in California. I'm from Louisville, Kentucky, and it's a damn shame that the cannabis is not legal there.
Do they have a medical program? Do you know, Kentucky?
They're working on it. It's going to go a lot faster than they think, but I just want to see the pressure be released off the industry so that we can all actually go and do what we want to do with this. It's not just about the money. I'm looking forward to no more pressure on us. You know.
Do you feel pressure, Troy, as a brand? As a leader in California, do you guys feel pressure?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to kind of speak to Eddie. I mean, normalization, it's a great word. I'd like, to almost add to that, like, legitimacy, right? Like, we've, really fought really hard over the last 2 years to create legitimacy for the Legion of Bloom in the California space, but ultimately, with the new regulations coming in, with our ability to actually, be perceived as a brand in a marketplace that does exist, where there's defined parameters, and kind of the dust is still settling on how we're supposed to operate in that marketplace, but ultimately, having that pressure kind of valve released, so we know exactly like what we can and can't do, how we can and can't operate, and really just start focusing on building the brand image and building the brand's name, like nationally, because now like we've kind of solidified what we can and can't do in the market that we exist in.
Well, and also the fact that California and both Nevada are high tourism.
Sure.
And there's a lot of recognition when people come from out of state, they get to the dispensary for the first time, they want to say, oh, I want to try what they've heard about or read about, in the magazines. So the fun and exciting stuff is where everybody gets, what about some horror stories? Where have people totally missed the mark? Without naming names, what about the industry is slowing us down, okay? Or what about the industry frustrates you as a proprietor, or you as a creative, or you as media trying to tell your brands, you guys can't put this in the ad. We can't accept it. Like, what are some of the things that you still find yourself coming up against time and time again?
I think the most kind of played out over, done thing is the over sexualization of cannabis,
right.
And the fact that, do we need to do that anymore?
The boobs and butts and all that.
Do we need the girl in the bikini with the 6-foot bong? And, I think
we've moved past that.
The days, those days have passed, and I think brands are more sophisticated now, and it's not about being bougie or being like all upscale everything all day, but, have some, look at the other big brands in the world, right? Take some cues, You're not seeing, Apple or Nike over-sexualizing ads. They're focusing on what they do well, and they showcase athletes because that's what they're known for. If you're known for great flower, let's educate, show people your flower, talk about it.
You brought up a really great point. You mentioned Apple, and you mentioned Nike, a sports activewear and a tech industry brand. Are there industries you would like to see cannabis behave or take a note from? We're all, professional gentlemen up here. None of us are wearing a tie. We don't have our hard bottoms on. We don't have to dress the part, but what about the other industries' profile do we want to emulate or allude to and be taken seriously with? I'm
excited about the health and wellness aspect of it all. We're working on some things that we can't really talk about, but when we sit in the rooms and we talk about, opening up clients like Erewhon and Moon Juice and shit like that, like that gets me off a little bit, because it's not MedMen or a normal cannabis. It actually takes their business from the cannabis retailer to the juice and health and wellness aspect, and that gets me super excited. Yoga studios, meditation facilities, and I do yoga and I meditate, and I'm not the healthiest guy in the world, but I like that. That's exciting to me, because it's mainstream, but it's also it's a huge industry. So if we can figure out a way to have that be the dialogue, rather than it Snoop Dogg and Be Real, who are both friends of mine, I'm not dissing that, but it's like sex and hip hop. It's like, okay, let's move on now, because those are not the only people that do this.
Right.
Like businessmen, businesswomen, everyone smokes fucking weed. So let's get off the fucking hip hop and off the titties, and let's get into the health and wellness aspect of what's going on here, because there are people that, like myself, depend upon this to kind of neutralize our disposition sometimes.
Absolutely.
It's not just about getting stoned and listening to fucking hip hop. So the health and wellness thing to me is an industry that I think, if we can figure out how to, walk like they walk and talk like they talk, and be accepted in that area a little bit more, I'd be excited about that.
That's exciting, and a great point to make, because unfortunately a lot of the parallels that we've seen just from a regulation standpoint has been grouped with alcohol and tobacco, which anybody who engages with cannabis over a long...
It's retarded, though.
It's totally anti-productive.
Fucking alcohol, right? And weed. So
again, that's why I think the importance of why our panel and the messaging and the language is what's going to be so important in being able to get people who even maybe not want any direct access or use of cannabis, but to at least understand how it's an okay thing. And it's not a criminal thing. The senator had said something earlier, which I wanted to commend him on again, and that the war of drugs was an attack on people of color and the people who were anti the war. You know what I mean? And that has been rebranded and remessaged over 4 decades. So it's like, how do we counteract all that negative, malicious programming, so to speak, into the space that, again, you mentioned 2 gentlemen who have been at the forefront of cannabis with, Snoop and Be Real, and those guys are great. They've done great work for us, but getting back to the visibility of, I think you were talking about the gentleman's name who used to have the TV show, the visibility of Montel
Williams,
that's right. Yeah, and having advocates like that to be able to support this common thread and this common language, and being able to recognize where those authenticities lie with the health and wellness industry, with the music industry, and obviously entertainment. We've seen some really cool, exciting new things come out. Are you guys fans of the show Disjointed? Do you like what they've been able to do with that show? You haven't seen it? It's a Netflix release. They've done some really cool engagements with brands locally in California. I wanted to talk about how they did that and how they rolled out some really cool activations with their fans that featured some products from the show. You guys familiar with that? We can move on from it.
My wife doesn't let me have Netflix.
Cool. Well, that was just a unique crossover of these kind of three industries coming together, and wanted to be able to highlight where those opportunities lies and where you see those opportunities being able to develop.
And
we get some pretty cool opportunities that are a lot of cross-promotional, cross-marketing stuff. We just talked to someone from the Grammys wanting to do some sort of a cannabis activation with them. Just trying to think of all the different...
Playboy TV, who wants to start collaborating and start dipping their fingers in here, because that's what's happening right now, where people are taking a look right now that are outside as we get closer, to perhaps the walls, coming all the way down for legalization. People are taking a look. So it's nice to start having those conversations.
And the activations you were talking about earlier, like at Coachella, and these different festivals, which are, as broad and mainstream as they come, that's something we're very interested in participating more in, to kind of keep pushing that envelope of reaching more and more people. And, I want to get into Art Basel and start doing, installations there with, different artists that represent cannabis and different things like that. So I think those are the ways we can touch more people than just, being an echo chamber in our own little industry here, just talking about the same thing amongst our peers, which is great, but how do we get to the, like you said, the Midwesterners? How do we get to the people in, Florida that are just coming online? They need a lot of education. So I think those are the sort of the big talking points for us for the next couple of years, for sure.
Where do you find most of the commonality between these industries taking place when you're, engaging with the different markets? You guys said you're in 30 different states. Are you guys anywhere other than California?
Right now, we are just in the California market.
Just in California? And Eddie, you have clients nationally, right, with the festivals and stuff? Sorry. I distracted you, gentlemen. Just being able to understand how we can support each other, both on a very specific micro, regional level, and then on a macro level, and being able to understand, even though operations are only in California or maybe only in Las Vegas, how that messaging is interacting with everybody across the board. Did you want to jump in?
Sure, yeah. The good part, we started Dope Magazine in 2011, and we were able to watch the legalization of Washington, Oregon, and Colorado, and throughout all that, there were a lot of mistakes that were made, a lot of roadblocks, a lot of things that were learned that, to us, the ability to use that experience and really open up the doors and the ventricles to communication so everyone can have access to it. And I don't think any other industry is more inclusive than cannabis, and that's how I got started, right. You know what I mean? I was smiling, I was sharing, you know what I mean? And all of a sudden, good things happen, right? So, I forgot what I was talking about.
Yeah. I was going to ask, who's the most surprising industry that has maybe reached out to advertising Dope Magazine? You don't have to put anybody on blast, but you can say, wow, I didn't expect a phone call from them. Anybody? Was that was the one?
Yeah, we're still waiting for a couple of phone calls. We're waiting for the fast food guys to start getting involved. They just did the Taco Bell Mary Jane thing, which is cool. So I think it's starting to happen. Not that we promote fast food, but that's something that is definitely part of mainstream America. And again, it's showing everyone, hey, look, Jack in the Box is talking about cannabis. Even though it may not be the direction we want to go if we're talking about health and wellness in that area, but at the same time, they're serving more people than any of us are ever going to touch, right?
That's another great brand example of somebody recently, I don't know how much collectively is known about it, but the Snoop's production company, Mary Jane, their content company, did a activation with Jack in the Box in Los Angeles, where they had a limited edition exclusive menu for a limited time. Those kind of things are the... Yes, exactly, yep. And being able to be creative in a way that allows these different elements of the subculture to finally come to light.
Now we're doing like infused upscale dinner with like 5 star chefs, you know, and that stuff is really neat, and that brings in another demographics, right? Demographics too that can influence the whole market, right? They're a consumer, they're gonna pick up your product. So each demographic needs to be addressed, right? But it needs to be addressed in the correct way, you know, in the way cannabis was meant to be, that which is, you know, inclusive, has those, you know, very grassroots, you know, thoughts and mentality is where cannabis came from. And I think, you know, as, you know, cannabis matured and she's growing up, you know, and going through legalization, now you're going through those adolescent years. But the truth is, you know, if our goal is to get the plant everywhere, we're gonna need to go through these road bumps. We're gonna need to make mistakes, but we're gonna need to help her through this transition so that she could be everywhere.
The plant is everywhere though already, right? It's just not above board or open, right? It's like everywhere, every state has weed, so it's everywhere. For me, as a marketing company, it's not gonna get good for us until it's normalized. Like we're talking about all these things that are like specific or niche or segregated. Fuck segregation. Weed is everywhere. Everyone's smoking the shit. Let's just get to the good stuff already. You know, let's start collaborating with mainstream companies and mainstream industries and start, you know, like I said, lessen the pressure. You know, I think that's where that's the conversation I want to have as a company and as an individual.
Yeah, I mean, if I could add to that, I think, you know, everyone's really quick to talk about like the macro market, like the whole, like the nation, right? We have, you know, 27 or 28 plus states with medical right now. More than half the union has like some sort of medical program. You know, self-medication or whatever you want to call adult use is like coming into like multiple markets. So everyone wants to talk about like this big macro picture, but I mean, to come back to the micro markets, like that's where all the brands are. That's where everyone really is. There's very few, you know, players in the space that are across more than a handful of the markets that exist in the country right now. So, you know, when you think about bringing like the mainstream, you know, connections to the table, you still have to think about how do we market this to a specific niche market, whether that niche market is an entire state or a specific region, like what, you know, Snoop was doing with Jack in the Box. Like it wasn't across like every Jack in the Box across the entire planet. It's like right in LA, you can come get this.
Very concentrated.
Right.
But it would have worked at every Jack in the Box across the planet. That's my point.
Maybe it will
in Kentucky,
work.
the kids would have been going and buying Snoop's munchie shit. You know, like it works everywhere. The conversation applies in every state. It's just segregated because who control? You know, at the end of the day, control, monopoly,
and persecution.
Right.
You know what I mean? But no one, you know what I mean? Persecuted. You can go to jail for it in some states still, and that is the biggest fucking crime about what's going on here.
Last night we went to Omnia to see A$AP Ferg for the Hudson party, and I had on one of my jackets, and it says, "No grass, no backstage pass," with a weed leaf that's this big. And they made me check my fucking coat and not go in the club because it was promoting weed. That's fucking retarded. Are you kidding me? Like, I had a weed leaf on my jacket and I couldn't wear it into the club. That's really...
And I mean,
persecution.
Like, and yeah, I mean, the persecution is real. I think, you know, some of us have been through the ringer over cannabis. Like, I myself was, like, you know, cannabis has done amazing things for me in my life, but I've also dealt with a lot of repercussions because of my love for the plant. But like, to really tie it all up, like it's until the federal government gets on board with like how the plant's going to be represented in the country itself, like across multiple platforms, it's going to be really difficult to tie like that macro picture with the micro markets. And that's kind of like the point I was trying to make, is like right now everyone, you know, like the expansion wants to happen. We're looking at what it looks like to license the brand in multiple markets, but like it's not like as simple as let's get an ad campaign and let's launch it across, you know, 50 states right now, because you don't have that market penetration. You know?
Is that because the philosophy from this perspective is so ingrained and the market just hasn't had an opportunity to catch up? Or is it because the messaging has missed? Or is it because we haven't had a chance to compete with the negative messaging that has existed for so long?
It's a little bit of all of that.
A little bit of all of it?
It's a little bit of all of that. I mean, these guys are a great example. The magazine is dope, right? I mean, literally, it's dope. It's not, your normal weed head magazine with like just weed head shit in it. It's actually talks about the lifestyle and the culture, and it shines a different light on the entire thing. So it's a little bit of everything. But yeah, it is missing because, like he said, sexualization. It's we're you know, and it's just the way that the government looks at what we're doing, and the way we look at what we're doing and what we're actually doing. It's like it's old school until it flips, until the younger generation gets their hands around it and actually puts their spin on it. Then it's going to taste and feel and look very different.
Scaling culture is difficult.
Scaling culture is difficult.
You know, and like that's what we're trying, you know, as a brand from Legion of Bloom. I know with Dope Magazine, with the lifestyle, I know like, you know, what Eddie is trying to bring together by fusing different markets and different entertainment with cannabis. I mean, we're really trying to preserve a culture. And
that's a great point.
Express a lifestyle and do that in a way that like everyone can understand it, because when the dust settles and the country does figure out what it wants to do with cannabis, like for me, the culture is extremely important. It's what drives me, it's what gets me up every single day, it's why I do what I do. So it's like, to see that culture diminish, and like it's gonna happen, because that's what happens when you're trying to scale a
commercialized,
concept, you know? But like, it's really important to understand that like, it's not gonna happen overnight, that it's a word of mouth thing, that like, inherently the culture is instilled in the plant, but like, we have to understand that it's like really easy to distill that if we like press way too hard, way too fast. And it's happening very, very quickly, so we have to understand that everyone in this space has a responsibility to understand where the culture is, where the culture came from. We know that it's going to be a progression with culture, like it's going to be an expansion, it's going to be a progression of the ideas, but there's like core values with cannabis and with the plant, where it comes from, what it represents, and that needs to make sure that's in the messaging repeatedly over and over again, so people understand like it's not beer and wine. It's like self-medication is self-medication, but it's like completely different things. It's not cigarettes and tobacco. It's cannabis. Cannabis is medicine, regardless of whether you use it for an ailment or you just need to let it go at the end of the day, or you need to feel you need to find that self-medication inside yourself. But like cannabis is medicine, like 100%, and that's a big part of the culture, and that's what I'm afraid we're going to lose with like, you know, bringing on all the recreational markets and not having, you know, a full understanding of like what the plan is, where it all came from, and why we're all here doing what we do.
So. For our company, what's interesting, to touch on something you said earlier, is, you know, 2-3 years ago, it was like hip hop dudes like, hey, can you get me a strain? I want to get my strain. Can you hook me up with a company? I want to do a strain. Now we're getting some pretty interesting phone calls from some non-hip-hop related influencers that want to get into the game. And you know, to his point, it's taking it back more to the culture and to the heart of the plant versus just wanting to get high and like have a cool strain. You know, I work with Slightly Stupid. We've done a lot of things with them. And it's like I get so many calls like, how can I get to Stupid? What can we do with Stupid? What can we do with Stupid? Now even the brands are coming and they're looking for different opportunities outside of Slightly Stupid. Because even though they're one of the #1 cannabis bands in the world, it's like there's so many other people that can relate to the cannabis, to the plant, and can relate to the culture. It's really starting to open up, you know, and that's exciting to me.
Well, it becomes a very powerful demographics. One that can influence a lot of things, economically, politically, which ends up making change on a big level. So the more people we get into this ecosystem, right, and everyone's doing the right thing, like you said, it came from a certain creed. It's just like it's natural, right? You don't see cannabis just has a nature to it in bringing inclusivity and people. So the more and more you know, we're able to get that message out, then, you know, I mean, I completely agree with you guys. You guys are right on point.
Awesome. Well, we're getting close to the end. I wanted to open the floor if anybody had any questions. I think we got a mic set up out there.
Yeah, we got a mic set up.
You do? Cool. Are there any questions? Yes, no, maybe so?
Well, do we got any questions coming up? Here, we got one over here. All right, we're done.
How difficult was it for Dope Magazine to actually go from the city you started in to branch out nationally?
Well, honestly, it wasn't that hard because, you know, it all just kind of happened. And like I said earlier, there was just such a hunger for education out there that as soon as we put out a good product, which we feel like we kind of done since day one, we take it really seriously. We take our editorial content very seriously, and we also, take our design very seriously, because I think a good, solid product can penetrate a market a lot faster than a sloppy, thrown together product. So I think we had the, I guess, luck, if you would call it that, of hitting the market at the right time in Washington, because obviously we came out even before it went recreational. We were just medical days. So when the waves kind of started in 2012 and 2011, that was, we were right there. So, they started falling like dominoes. You got Colorado, Washington, Oregon, all the way down the West Coast. So we just kind of followed it along. But one thing that was important to us was actually getting into the state before the recreational market actually happened, because we think it's important to get down to the grassroots level and understand the community in that area organically. Not we're just kicking the door and being like, hey, come advertise with us. We want people to know that we want to understand the Las Vegas market, the medical community here, the recreational community here, as much as we do any other market, because it's important to us, and that's how we tell the truths in our magazine, the stories that people relate to, and that's why we have local, regionalized editions of our magazine. It's not just a big national magazine that is the same thing that goes to every single state in the country. We actually have local content in all the states that have a medical and recreational market, and we're very proud of that. It's a lot of extra work. It's a lot easier to make one magazine a month and throw it out there to everyone, but we feel it's so important for us to tell the stories of the people on the ground, and I think that's how we kind of get into those markets a little easier, is because we're actually boots on the ground, talking to the people, getting the stories, and not just sitting up 30,000 feet up and just, saying, we're dope, read our magazine. So that answers your question.
On the flip side of that, it was hard as hell. It wasn't easy at all, because when you're building an industry, when you're building a company, just like a startup, you're doing multiple roles on limited budgets, right? Very little room to make mistakes. Right? If you're self-funding yourself, you have to get to the point then. These steps are very important in all businesses, but twice as hard in cannabis, right? There are not 30, 40, 50-year professionals experienced as a CEO of a cannabis company, right? Or a CFO, right? And so as this matures a little bit, it's been very hard, and the most important part for us is do it right first, and cross your T's, I's. There's business 101 stuff that you have to expect that you're going to be $1 billion company. I'm just hypothetical, and you have to take those steps right now, not when it does happen, because to your point earlier about trademarks and all those things, you go down that road, next thing you know, you got to freaking change your name. Right. You just spent millions of dollars building that brand up, but you didn't do the 101s. A business. So it was very, very difficult. We continue to work harder than freaking ever. I can tell you it's harder now than it was the first day we opened this. And we'll continue to work hard, because we really just love what we do. And on what he was saying, it's just like being able to do that and really make a difference makes us wake up every day and work even harder. Because we want everyone to be successful. We want to build tools to make everybody successful. Because that's the only way this industry is going to grow. Absolutely. And we're excited to be a part of that.
Hey, was there a tipping point moment for you guys with the magazine where things started to propel further?
I think for us, funding is always there, but you have to have the proof of concept before someone walks through that door and says, you know what, I'm going to give you $1 million because I believe in your vision. And then, again, now you have to figure out how to use this $1 million wisely, because it's very difficult.
Was there a specific moment since your inception that kind of made that, where you turned that corner?
Well, a lot of milestones, that you have to reach in order to get there. And, if you look at it from an investment point of view, there's your angel round, your Series A, and this is on a business, but there are milestones within that thing that you have to accomplish. But just being able to get to point A is very difficult. And then you have to climb the next mountain.
And to keep it going.
Well, you have to prove, right? You have to prove that you can scale the business, grow it responsibly, so that you can get to the next stage. And I don't even know
scaling culture is difficult. That was a great point you made earlier. I think it was very apropos in the sense that people don't understand unless they've been a part of it. And this is such a code word slang in the, on the low type of a culture over the years that being able to just, it's the antithesis of what everybody's used to. It's opposite of being that kind of outward facing, and having these conversations, having these dialogues, having that visibility is what's going to present that shift. Any more questions? I think we've got time for maybe two more. We'll take two more.
Hello. Thank you so much for touching on education, stigma, breaking that mold. As a multi-state healthcare practitioner, licensed in states, and a chef, I face many hurdles in licensing and other ways of getting healthcare information out there. And as an educator, I know that that is one of the, education is automatically the answer to helping us advance. But on the healthcare side, in a multi-state level, other than education, and I thank you guys because in print and not even print, you make the world of difference for patients of mine who don't have the internet. And so having patients that do not go online and see certain brands with the boobs and blunts and all that stuff going on is a great thing, but I also need that print that educates people as well in a market that healthcare is not being supported by the federal people who fund us, who should be funding the healthcare side of cannabis. What is your advice in this market so that multi-state we can move forward in healthcare?
What is our advice to the local market for federal healthcare support? Is that the...
For cannabis to move forward better in healthcare across state lines uniformly. Like how can we come together?
Sure. Any gentlemen?
Well, I think this is the same question about banking right now, right? We can similarly relate what you're talking to about banking, right? Because the federal laws prohibit us to do certain things, people are trying to get creative, right? Unions are getting together for the banking side. Perhaps, again, I'm not suggesting because I don't know a lot about that thing, but the conversation needs to happen. Certain people need to step out and say, you know what, I'm out of the cannabis closet. I'm a healthcare person. I'm stepping up to the forefront. And the more, I always talk about that person that steps out, the person that you can relate to, right? And then it starts to have a bigger conversation. And right now, there's banking conferences to figure out, and there's now people have solutions, and I think similar to that, if there are groups of people that begin to talk about that. Might be able
I was just gonna add, it's definitely unfortunate that there's not really, like you're saying, I'm gonna say like a coalition would be the wrong word to state, but like there's not like a governing body that's like maybe developed from the cannabis space to help like try to create some of this stuff, because there's a clash between like the federal and the states. It's really hard to kind of deal with that.
Maybe there's an opportunity
the
there
scheduling is
for
really
somebody.
Unfortunate. I know that like Americans for Safe Access is like a really good, organization, a really good platform for like distilling information across multiple states and like kind of bringing like the key points about cannabis and what is safe about and how to find safe cannabis, but also like what cannabis is, bringing reports that are coming in from different scientific bodies. So right now we kind of have that as a blueprint for what it could look like, but like you're right, there's no real like alpha or omega answer in the question.
Well, there are some organizations. There's the Marijuana Policy Project. There's Freedom Leaf. There are certain.
We'll connect. We'll definitely.
Yeah, there are. There certainly are. Maybe there isn't one as popular as like ACLU or something in that magnitude, but there are certainly organizations on the forefront doing that. So we'll take one more question if there's. Sure.
Could you guys possibly touch on the importance of social media from a marketing perspective in the cannabis industry?
I'll leave that up to.
Yeah, social media is important, right? You can galvanize a brand's story through interacting with people instantaneously, right? So it's obviously a platform that is super important for telling your brand story, really solidifying information passing through the market space and through like the customer base, like through the patients, like really being a part of engagement and engaging. So social media, I think we can all agree is kind of it's not like everything you need in your marketing strategy, but it's definitely got to play a huge role in like how you bring your brand to not just the local market, because you can really like use social media to geotag and like get really precise at like who you're trying to target, but also, you know, telling that story to, you know, the rest of the world, because everyone's connected now through it.
And I think, you know, we always preach, you know, the 360 approach to marketing. You know, there's so many ways to market, right? I mean, there's 100 ways to skin the cat, but you know, you got to understand your brand is sort of what is your demographic you're going after, right? There's event activations, there's print, there's digital, there's social, there's all these avenues that, you know, we touch all of them at Dope. We try to make sure that we give our, you know, our clients opportunities to sort of dabble in this or that and see what they like and what works for them. But ultimately, social, you know, it's a two-headed sort of monster, right? There's the great part about it, which there's a very low entry point to get in there and start doing some damage marketing-wise without spending a lot of money or without having to do too much except, you know, the obnoxious, I gotta post every day thing. But after that, you know, there's also, though, the other side of it where there's a lot of misinformation going on, there's a lot of exploitation going on, there's a lot of influencers that aren't really influencers, but you know, they're getting paid big bucks because they have 1 million followers, you know. So you gotta just kind of like, you gotta kind of navigate the world a little bit, you know, talk to your you know, your clients and your customers and understand, it's like, you know, where do they engage with media, especially for cannabis, you know? Are they, you know, the patient that likes to read a magazine, or are they the kid that's on their phone 24 hours a day that can't take their eyes off of it, you know? So understanding your clients and your customers is really that's what's going to drive you to the right choice for you, for sure.
Well, at the end, it's about getting more eyeballs. If you're a product, you want more eyeballs, right? Opportunity to do that in print, in digital, social media is a big aspect of that. Like James's point, you can create it for free for yourself. I mean, but you can also utilize other platforms that have the audience already. So the good part about us, it's taken a lot of time and a lot of work, but if we can get 200,000 people following us, that's quite a powerful tool, but you have to work on it, you have to nurture it, you have to deliver the brand promise, you know, when you're, you know, delivering that message on there of who you are. So, you know, to me, just more eyeballs. You got to do everything. If you want to get more people, you have to do everything you can, you know, at this point, because it is a race in a way, right? A lot of things are happening and it's happening really, really fast. So, you know, to get more people in front of it is, I think, important.
It's definitely a brand race right now. You know, we kind of use that term a little bit. You know, it's a little hard to swallow, but at the same time, this is a brand new industry, and you know, states are opening up, and brands like Legion of Bloom and the guys who are out there and they're doing it are going to be the ones that are going to be around for the next 10, 20, 30 years because they're putting in the work and the money and the time now versus, you know, trying to, you know, just, you know, oh, I'm going to just take my time, I'm going to maybe start a social channel. You know, they're investing into their brand. So I think for us, you know, as obviously we are the ones that are the microphone that we try to, you know, tell everyone about your brand, you know, it's important that you engage with the people that are professionals because in the beginning, it's hard. You know, at some point, your brand might be amazing and you can do it yourself, you know, but, you know, like Dave said, if you want to kind of expedite things, you know, if you want to get it going as fast as possible, you know, talk to a pro and let them help you sort of guide your, you know, your advertising opportunities.
Thank you guys for your questions. I wanted to allow you gentlemen to make any closing thoughts or remarks that you wanted to share with the audience before we depart.
We got some complimentary Dope magazines back there on the table. Tim here from Las Vegas is here. If you want to talk to him about anything locally, he can answer any good questions for you. And yeah, come say hi afterwards if you have any further questions.
Eddie, Troy, where can we find you guys? You want to drop your socials? The Grow Division?
The Grow Division, at the Grow Division.
At the Grow Division, at
Heavy Grass Official.
At thelegionofbloom.com, at thelegionofbloomca on Instagram. Yeah, excited. We're really looking forward. We're about to kind of break open into the Nevada marketplace. It'll be the first licensing opportunity for us to come here. So
remember that name, local folks.
Just kind of wanted to put that out there. We're like definitely in the process. Not sure when and where, but it's going to happen sooner than later. So really excited.
Hey, can you speak up on the mic a little bit?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Look for us. Legion's coming to Nevada, so.
It will be here soon. Well, thank you all for joining us so much. I wanted to thank James, David, Eddie, and Troy for joining me for marketing in the mainstream. Give you guys a round of applause for joining us and sticking around. We'll be back at 2 o'clock for Innovation and Technology. And in the meantime, I hope you get to enjoy the room and enjoy each other and meet some new friends. Thank you for joining us. Thanks.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
I'm just gonna walk over here real quick. Just don't touch it.